If you're still placing things in your Unreal Engine 5 scenes like this, then I'm glad you're here because in this video, I'll be walking you through how I'm creating much more realistic environments way faster than before using the brand new update of my favorite plugin for Unreal that really now makes working with that default gizmo to move things around and to get them in place in a believable way feel like I'm working in slow motion with my arms tied behind my back. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Chet, though I'm probably better known for my sci-fi art as Future Familiar over on Instagram, where after 10 years working as a creative director in tech and advertising, I finally decided to chase my passion and I enrolled back in school to learn how I could start building the sci-fi worlds I've always dreamed of. During these past 3 years of my studies, I had the chance to learn from and to be mentored by seniors and leads from studios like Remedy and Blizzard and CD Projekt Red, and that was an amazing experience that really helped me nail down all of the basics of how to create 3D game art. And now that I've graduated and I'm continuing to put in the reps, practicing everything I learned to refine my skills and to keep getting better, I can't help but find myself still trying to figure out new ways to do things. And maybe that's because of the habits I've built up in that role as a creative director, where I'm always looking for new ways to help my teams achieve more with the resources they have. Or maybe it's because of the limited time that my day job leaves me in the evenings and weekends to continue practicing my 3D art. But either way, I find myself constantly wanting to find new ways to gain more leverage over the creative process, to find new tools and resources that help me create my environments to a higher quality, but with less time, which is why in this video, I want to share with you how I've been doing just that with the latest version of Dash that you can see here at the top of my Unreal Engine 5 viewport. So what we're looking at here with this toolbar in the middle of Unreal is Dash's redesigned interface as of its 1.8 release, which just came out last week. And if you are completely new to Dash, I did do an overview of the plugin in a previous video for its 1.7 release that came out earlier this summer. And I even invited the founder on for a podcast episode where we discussed everything Dash, everything that went into building it, the vision, and where they see it going in the future. So if either of those are interesting, I'll link them both in the description. But for today's video, I want to walk you through specifically how I'm using all of Dash's features packaged under its place and scatter category of tools, which are helping me achieve what I promised at the beginning of this video, which is it's helping me build larger environments in less time, but to a higher quality by doing things like helping me get assets into a scene quicker, selecting and translating assets around in a much more efficient way. But most importantly, it's helping me move those assets and get them into a scene in a much more realistic and true to life way by introducing things like randomness to their placement in a way that mimics how they would have ended up there in the real world, but still retaining just enough control to dial in exactly the look I'm going for. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close out the Dash toolbar for now, and I want to give a little bit of context to what I mentioned at the beginning and also what you saw in the thumbnail, which is relying on this default gizmo, this default translation, scale, and rotate gizmo to do everything in Unreal, right? We won't be able to get away from it completely, but let's look at how we would bring an asset in normally if we didn't have Dash at our disposal. So let's say I wanted to bring in a duck. So we have the duck here. We can right click, browse to asset, and we have access to Unreal's built-in content drawer. So control space will bring that up, left click, and we drag the duck in. But let's say we want to bring him over near his friends. So I would hold right click, WASD to move around the scene. While I'm holding right click, I can middle mouse up and down. You can see here to increase the camera move speed. And I would bring him over. I would use WE and R to mess with his scale, rotation, and movement. Bring him in, keep moving the camera. Let's see here, we want to scale him down. So we would R scale and yeah, keep kind of moving the camera around and get him into place. Yeah, so not too bad, right? Only takes a few seconds, especially if you had some practice navigating around. But if we're looking at an environment like this, right? Something like Decagon built here, this beautiful, I assume near automata inspired environment. There's a lot of assets and every little thing that you do will add up, right? So anything that you wanted to get into place, especially if you have a bunch of like debris and assets like this throughout a full environment, right? If you only have the evenings and weekends to work on an environment like I do, you really want to maximize your time. So that is what it looks like traditionally, right? But let's go ahead and pop open Dash. We'll do a quick overview of its UI, and then I'll show you how we can start replacing different things that you would do in Unreal normally with a Dash action or a Dash tool that'll significantly speed up. And there's some really fun ones. So I'll save those a little bit to the end just because they're so fun and so fun to mess with. But if we just look at the UI here, you'll see I've already pre-docked it over here. If we come into the three dots, you'll have access to do things like move it to the left, center it, move it to the right. You'll have access to documentation. Dash has really solid documentation, just like Epic does for Unreal. You can access those pages here if you know what you're looking for. If you have questions, the team is really active in their Discord. They have some really nice tutorials, including a new one that's a little bit more project-based and released with this version of Dash. And then, of course, the license manager, and you can close Dash here. But we'll leave it here. You can move it around manually if you want, just by clicking the logo. I like to dock it right under all the other tools that I'm replacing using Dash. Snapping on for now. Yeah. And let's look at some things that are new for this release. Some things are just repackaged for this release. They added a board, which is new for 1.8. This is PureRef built right into Dash and Unreal now. If you use Miro or something like that, if you come from a different space, it's basically just an infinite canvas. You can throw your images and reference here and just have them right at hand as you're building your scene. Kind of nice. So another thing that Dash has added anew for the 1.8 release is something that I'm pretty excited about, and I think it's pretty prophetic for the space in general. But if you click this question mark, you'll have access to live documentation. So at a very surface level, what they've done is they've trained their documentation that you can access manually using GPT. So you can use natural language to search their docs, and it'll explain what tools to use, how to use them, and how to achieve different things you're trying to do. Now, it's not only tied to Dash. You can also search Unreal Engine 5 tips and tricks. You can also just ask general environment art questions. If you're completely new to environment art and you just have questions of how to achieve certain looks, what's the best way to go about doing things, it's built right in. So you don't have to leave. You don't have to have a GPT, right, a ChatGPT window or tab open in a browser and hop back and forth. It's just inside of Dash, inside of Unreal, which I think a lot of tools will probably start doing, training the documentation and also just having natural language help within the tools themselves. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the content browser now that comes with Dash. And this is a much more powerful version of the content drawer that's in Unreal, right? There's nothing wrong with the content drawer in Unreal. It's extremely easy to organize, extremely easy to navigate around and to find your assets and import new ones. And you won't be able to get away from this entirely. But when you're working and you're building an environment, you'll see how the content browser in Dash might be more of your go-to as you're building out your scenes. So let's go ahead and close this content drawer and look at this menu up here where you can see Dash comes with access to different libraries. Now, IES libraries are, if you're not familiar with them, profiles for lights, right? So any light in the real world has a specific fall off, which are very different than the lights that ship with Unreal, right? If you have a spotlight and you push G to see it, it's a very uniform fall off to this light. Now, that's not how lights work in the normal world. So lighting manufacturers know this. And if you're in ArchViz, you're probably familiar with going to a website of a lighting manufacturer and looking through all their IES profiles to see how the different lights look so that when you're building an apartment or something, you have different looks that feel right in different environments. And in environment art, this is extremely powerful because you're able to create a much more true to life look in your scene without having to manually go in, find all the profiles online, download them, import them into Unreal, attach them to a light to get a different fall off. Instead, with Dash, you have access to that light already attached to a profile. So it's as simple as finding the one you like, dragging it in, placing it where you want, hitting enter, and you'll see the cone here looks very different than that spotlight. And this is a very easy way to get much more realistic and unique looks inside of Unreal. So that's super, super quick and easy. Let's go ahead and delete that. And they're doing the same thing for assets, right? So of course you can go to libraries like Polyhaven Online, find the asset you want, download it, import it to Unreal, or you can come into your library here with Polyhaven, choose the resolution you want, drag and drop it into your scene, and it's already here. And you can drag it in, hit enter, and it's in your scene. And that's it. Super simple, right from the content library. Also, if you have Mega Sans assets that you've imported using Quixel Bridge, they'll also be here and accessible. And you also have what they call a unified view, which is all of your assets across these, right? IES, your current project, Polyhaven, Megascans, but also you can point Dash to access your master Unreal folder. So if you have other projects that you've worked on, say I've built out a couple of different sci-fi scenes and I'm constantly importing the assets between projects, instead you can point Dash to that master folder and you'll have access to all of those assets directly within your content browser, which is super cool. And to take that a step further, they give you the option, which is completely opt-in and optional, to use GPT just like they do their docs to visually look at all of your different assets and to add natural language tags to those assets to make them searchable. So I think a good example here is if we come to Megascans, they've already manually added a lot of different tags to their asset. Now, that's super time consuming, and there's a reason why they don't release content every day, right? What they do is super high quality and time consuming. But using GPT, in order to get all these tags, right? If you're just searching, right, like I want to have some rubble here and I want it to be broken or urban or damaged, something like that, all of your assets you're not going to want to tag manually. So you can come into your project and just run GPT on this, compute. It'll take a few seconds to do it, or a few minutes, depending on the speed of your computer. But it will just tag all those assets and it will make them super easily searchable just using natural language. Now, completely optional. I know some people have different opinions on whether they want to do this type of thing. They're only using it for the tagging. It's not feeding some larger thing. But yeah, I think that's a really cool, powerful way to access all of your assets and to get access to more. As I understand it, they're building in more libraries in the future with different versions. So once you get used to it, it is extremely powerful. Okay, so now that we've done an overview of the content browser, let's go ahead and start getting assets into our scene, like I mentioned at the beginning, in a much more quick and efficient way compared to dragging it in and translating it around. So let's go ahead and let's work with this duck again. So let's search duck. I think 1K is fine. We'll go ahead and left click and drag it in. And you'll see that we have access to a little bit of a different interactivity with the assets. So because we haven't locked them into place yet, we drug it in and you'll see the cursor is a little bit different. It is live snapping to whatever the closest surface is. Now, if you haven't already, go ahead and go full screen because you'll have a few tooltips here that you'll want to make notice of. So we have quick help, which will let you know all of the shortcuts you have access to while we're in this live place mode, right? So we can move it around just by left mouse clicking. We can rotate it using shift right mouse. So we can rotate it different directions if we want, if the live snapping isn't working for us. Of course, we can do that. We can use shift left mouse to rotate along a normal. So this might not be what you would expect. You would think it's the normals of the object, but it's actually much more helpful. So if we shift left mouse, rotate along the normal, it'll rotate along the normal of where you clicked from. So if we wanted to rotate it around this barrel, super simple, left and middle mouse, and then we can just hit enter and we've locked them in. Now, you can get back to this by going to place and move, and you'll again get access to this interactive move tool. Enter again to lock it in. I will make mention of the fact that you can do this in Unreal by default. So if you've selected an asset, let's close this content browser for a second, and you're moving it around, you can snap things off and on manually, right? Or you come in here. I didn't know this for a year, and this is, I think that this is a good example of how Dash takes everything to do with environment building that maybe Unreal already has built in, but it makes it much more accessible and it surfaces everything that you'd want to do as an environment artist without having to dig into complex systems or remember crazy hotkeys that you're never going to remember as you're working. So I could come in here and surface snap this, and then I would have to left click and click on the little sphere here at the middle of the gizmo, and I have access to this. But when I'm done, it's still on. I'll have to come in and surface snap it off again. Now I can work that way, right? I can come in here and toggle it off and on for every asset, but I'll probably forget that I have it on. I'll probably forget that I have it off, and I'll just generally not use it. But with Dash, if I get used to working with the content browser and just dragging assets in, it's super smart in that while I'm placing, it automatically toggles that on, also gives me access to all these hotkeys. And when I hit enter, it toggles it off, right? So that interactive move tool is no longer active because I've locked in the placement. Okay, so now that we've looked at the content browser and how to get assets into your scene quicker than using the normal content drawer that comes with Unreal, let's look at assets that we already have in the scene and see how Dash can make things more efficient. So we have these ducks here, and let's say we wanted to move these two ducks around. Let's see what else the place tools have for us. Selecting nearby is, as the name says, it allows you to do place, select nearby, and of course it's only selecting these two ducks and not this duck and not the barrel, even though they're all nearby, because the way that Dash works is when you're selecting nearby, it selects things within proximity, but also that are the same size or smaller. So it uses those two variables. And I think that's a really intuitive way to do things, right? Because if we wanted to move these ducks, it would make sense, like if you're looking at a table or maybe a dresser or a shelf, if you're selecting things on the shelf, you probably just want to move them around. But let's use this barrel, for example. We could do place, and we could select above, of course, to select things right above it, or select nearby is smart enough to know that we probably want to move the barrel and everything near it and smaller than it. So again, table example. If we have a table with tons of stuff that's spread all around it, select the table, select nearby, you can move the whole table around. Looking through here to see what else we have select nearby, select above. We have physics tools. We'll come to that at the end because I think it's the coolest and most fun, so I'll save that a little bit for the end. You can random swap things. So let's say you had a bunch of assets that are all similar, different colors, different shapes, whatever. You can random swap them, and you can see they move around. Come in here, move tool, interactive move tool as well. You have pivot tools. So pivots are the point of the mesh where you have leverage from. So it's wherever this little sphere is. And this is something that you choose when building an assets, but if you bought assets, they might not be in the correct place of where you'd want it, depending on how you want to use it. And Unreal does have ways to interact with pivots. I've never found them especially intuitive. Usually the way that I'm using it is I right click and come in here, and I'll reset the pivot because I had accidentally moved it. But Dash gives you a few quick and easy ways to move it to the center, the bottom, or the top of the pivot based on the bounds of the mesh. So let's say for whatever reason we wanted to have the pivot at the center of the duck, we can just move it to the center. And it's as simple as that. Coming down here further, transform tools. So if you have a bunch of assets that are different sizes, I think most of these are intuitive, but just as an example, we can average their scale out. And yeah, between pivot, transform tools, and selections, over time through a whole environment, you'll see that it just saves you seconds, minutes, hours, depending on how big the environment is, but it really adds up, and it's really worth getting used to these things. Coming in here and just placing a single or multiple assets in that way. Now, there are some ways that we can use this to build more realistic environments, right? These all require a bit of manual placement, just like working with Unreal normally, but when we bring physics into the mix, we can do things like, let's say we wanted to make a duck, put a duck on the ground here. So we want to say we Alt and left click to duplicate, turn off snapping, and say put him down here. Hold shift left click to bring the camera with it. Drag him around, get him into place. Now, I don't know about you, but I really get into my head about these types of things, trying to make things feel natural. So I really end up spending a lot of time tweaking, like, would he fall this way? And I think that the reason for that is if you look at the natural world around you, right? If you look at your desk in front of you, my desk has things strewn all about, right? I have a little small rig hawk lock here. I have my color checker here, my wallet here, but everything is not where I place it, right? I didn't set things to a grid, and grid is on by default here. I didn't set things to a grid. Everything was bumped or nudged, or my cats ran into it, or I moved things and it bumped into something else. And that lends itself well to creating a realistic environment in the real world, right? Like everything feels lived in. Now, if you've ever created something that's called a flat lay in marketing, right? So you have a blanket, maybe you set a bunch of things on it and you take a top-down photo, and it's a way to like showcase different merchandise or clothes or whatever it is. And getting that to feel very natural is a delicate dance because you want things to feel in the right place, but you want them to feel a little bit realistic and not like it was just CG. And this is what we're fighting in Unreal, right? Everything feels CG when you place it because you did very specifically place it. And when you bring physics in, it helps you add in that randomness that I promised at the beginning of the video, where if we do place, physics drop. So we'll do that first. So let's say he's up here, place, physics drop. you'll see he dropped right onto the barrel. And it's super natural and realistic because it's using the different collision points of the different meshes to bounce him around. So let's go ahead and hit stop. We'll undo this guy. And let's use physics to drop him onto the ground. So physics drop. We'll drag him over. We'll turn off snapping. And we'll see as he gets closer to the edge, he tumbles and falls onto the ground realistically. Now, this is a live tool. So you see I can push stop if I want to turn off physics. But for now, it's live. And if we duplicate, we can create a handful of ducks. And they all have live physics. So if I bump them around, they continue to knock into each other, duplicate a few more, move this guy, and he falls. Now, this is something that Unreal has built in, right? Unreal has physics, and that's what Dash is making use of. But the fact that it becomes a live tool and only for these assets makes it a really intuitive and quick way to work. So let's use another example to illustrate this. So let's say I wanted to get these springs into place, right? They need to feel random. They need to feel like nobody placed them. They kind of got knocked over into the corner here. So if we Alt and drag to duplicate and bring it over here manually, I could do all this tweaking, right? Just like with the duck. I can get in here, try to get my camera aligned with the ground, bring it in, rotate it, mess with the pivot if I need to, because it's in the middle here. I could put it at the bottom if I wanted. And I could manually place it there. Or using physics, I could drag this up and over, get it into a place that makes sense, place, physics drop. Now you'll see it did move a little bit. But one really cool thing about Dash is they've kind of predicted the way you would interact with this most of the time. Now, the collision point for this asset, as with a lot of assets, doesn't match the actual geometry because that's super expensive and complicated to calculate, which means that throughout a whole scene, you don't want everything calculating every polygon and every detail. So it relies on more of a simple collision. If you push Alt-C on your keyboard, you can preview collisions for meshes, and you'll see here that we have a very simple collision around the bounds of this asset. And that's totally fine if you don't plan to interact inside this asset, but I want to have things inside here. So since we're still live, I can click on the asset, come into collision, and change it to complex collision. And our spring drops through. Now, being able to do that without having to go into the asset and manually change it, turn on physics, and do everything manually, just having access to, while this is live, just change this collision type, it's pretty cool. It's pretty quick and easy to interact with. Now you can see I duplicated the wrong thing here, so I'll undo that. Click the spring, duplicate it, just drop a bunch of springs, and they bounce around in a very extremely realistic way, something that would take me a lot of time to do by hand. And let's do one last example. We'll push Alt-C to get rid of collision. We'll turn that off. Go ahead and delete them for now. But let's say that I had this barrel here, right? This barrel along here, along this grid, it's totally fine. But let's say that in my story or in the storytelling I want to do for the environment, I wanted to like have a barrel leaning up against these stairs like it had fallen down the stairs or something. Again, manually, Alt-click, bring it over, come in and rotate, maybe turn snapping off for rotate, do this, maybe bring it more here, rotate, get the camera nice and tight to the ground to make sure it's on the ground. And then you can see it's a little bit of a dance here to try to get it to look realistic. I can change my orientation to local for rotation. And then I probably want to go back to a world again. Here to world. That. And that's how I would do it manually. And again, throughout a whole environment, tons and tons of time. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like with physics. So let's Alt, move it over. Let's get them kind of above the stairs a little bit. Just give it a tiny bit of rotation. Now, I will say, because I'm only going to do this once, is that with physics, if it's overlapping collision before you hit physics, it might just slingshot across the scene, and you might have to redo it, or it might fall in a realistic way, but not the way you want. So you might want to redo it. But either way, let's go ahead and give it a shot. So physics drop. Okay, so that was pretty lucky. It did exactly what I wanted. It just used physics, knocked it down the stairs. It looks totally fine. And I can, of course, lock it in, give it a little bit of rotation if I want. Or I can just do it again because it's still live. I can just drag it up. Grab the sphere here, drag it up the stairs, let it slide down. I could duplicate it if I wanted the second one, which will land perfectly first try, of course. I could drag them up here, slide down, gets a little bit of rotation. Supernatural. Yeah. So this is something that I use all of the time in literally every single environment that I work in now. So let's go ahead and hit stop. And that is how to get one asset or a couple assets into a scene, right? I can put one there, I can duplicate it. But let's say that I had let's say a barrel and I had a ton of ducks and I wanted to duplicate them so they spawn over the edges and fall out. You can see that I already did that with the springs over here. But let's practice it with this rubble because we can do it in a little bit more of an interesting way. If we go to place, not only can we physics drops things and duplicate them through, but we can physics paint them. And you'll see here that we have a brush sphere, which is the bounds through which it will paint physics. Make it a little bit smaller. And everything that I had selected, when I hit that, you'll see it's also a live tool. It will allow me to paint all those meshes within that sphere. And that's just left clicking and dragging. But if I want to manipulate them once they're in the scene, let's get rid of a few of these because there's a few too many. Drag it through. I can use middle mouse and hold, and it will gather them up and move them around. So you can really get more of a fine-tuned control over it. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the video, where I said Dash is able to add in randomness, but also retain just enough control to still give it more of a curated look. So I'll just grab a few of these and move them around. So I get the randomness, but I also get the luxury of the control, which is how you are able to art direct your scenes and to get that realistic look without just having to rely on lucky rolls or randomness. Now, speaking of getting a lot of things into your scene efficiently, now we've looked at physics dropping, which lets you do a couple things. We've looked at physics painting, which lets you spawn a ton of things using physics. But if you've ever used Unreal before, you're probably familiar with something called scattering, and foliage is the most clean, simple example of this, right? You can come in here, select different meshes or different foliage. I don't have any. I think I just have a couple in here now. You can select them and you can come in and you can just paint them in your environment. I won't do it because it'll start lagging my scene. But Unreal does have pretty decent controls for scattering assets. Now, this is a lot of settings. I don't even know what they all do. But I think what Dash has done is it's taken a lot of these controls and not only expanded it to other types of assets, but made it a much more intuitive and fun to play with system that doesn't rely on getting the settings right, then painting them. It lets you keep it more interactive. And I'll show you what I mean here. So if we go back to the content drawer and you know what, let's use the duck because it's kind of funny. Let's say we wanted to spawn something on the landscape here, just like you would with a normal foliage tool. You can come in here, select the duck, or let's just select the duck since he's already in here, scatter, and we can surface scatter. Now, surface scattering is the most traditional form of scattering, which is what the foliage tool is using. You can select the duck, scatter, choose the plus to scatter that mesh, and choose the surface you want to scatter on. And you hit the plus here, and you'll see you have a shit ton of ducks. But now that we've scattered it, kind of what I was mentioning with the foliage tool is we don't have to set all the settings, then paint. We can scatter and then dial in all the noise and randomness to get things looking right. Now, I won't go through all of these because I kind of want to speed run this, but you can see that you have the ability to mask and add in noise and add in adjustments. So let's just do a couple of those. So we'll change the density down to 0.2. Let's add a green duck to this. So we'll also scatter green duck. You can add it in. Let's see, we can change the min and max scale. So like we don't want them to be too different. We can add a sink. So we can like put them in the ground. Imagine you're scattering like trees or something. You can sink those into the ground. You can add like a randomness to the sink if you want, so they're not all equal. You can add object and proximity maskings. So if you don't want them to be near an object, or you only want them to be near an object, you can add those in using the plus. Let's say I don't want the green ducks anymore. Or say we only want the green ducks, apparently. They're in here. If I want to bring the yellow duck back, it's as simple as bringing it back in. Now, of course, that's surface scattering just on a landscape, just like you would do with the foliage tool, but you can use surface scattering for all kinds of things, right? So if we bring up the content browser and we have this duck, and if we drag it in, you'll see something that we had skipped earlier is this drop the asset in the scene, hold control to display options when dropping. So if I hold control and release the mouse, I'll get access to this menu here. So I can scatter here, scatter on selection, drop it here, physics paint or physics drop. So before we had an asset in the scene, we went into place and manually selected those options. But now that we know about this control shortcut, just bringing an asset into the scene, you can already get access immediately to those different things. So let's go ahead and left click, hold control, scatter here on this barrel, and you see it automatically added the barrel in as the surface object and ducks as scatter. And of course you can mess with things like the density, which would be a little bit of a nightmare. 0.5, you can mask it in almost any way you can imagine. But what I really like I said before, is that it's interactive after you've already placed it and scattered it. So we can come in here and feature mask, right? If we wanted to mask it by angle. For example, if you only wanted like a buildup on the top, or like if the barnacles on the side of a ship should only be on the top, you can just mask it by angle. Or you can come in here and reset anything that you did. You can add random noise masks, proximity masks, and if you hover over, it'll tell you what it does. You can pass meshes, curves, and even instancers to use them as masks. Distance to dial that in. Object masking, which is similar to proximity mask, but it will use ray tracing to be a little bit more accurate on where things are placed. And you can use proximity and object masking throughout all the different tools in Dash to make sure things are near an object or only not near an object. So in this case, if we were scattering on the ground, we could pass this barrel in as an object mask and make sure that nothing is clipping inside of it. And I think a good example of that would be to move on to the next scattering type. So let's go to scatter. Yeah, let's do path scatter. So let's use we can use this duck here. So if we come into create, we can go down to curve tools, and let's go ahead and just draw a curve. So draw curve, and another interactive tool here. You can see we've just super easily drawn a curve spline right here. We can adjust the distance of the different points. It won't really matter in our case. How smooth it is, so in case your hand isn't super steady. And we can just lock it in. And now we have a curve here. Go ahead and select the duck, come into scatter, path scatter, add it as the thing that we want to scatter. Select the curve, and add it as a curve. And now we have a bunch of ducks in a row. And I think that ducks are a funny example that hopefully will stick in your head. But when you're creating anything like a road or a racetrack, things that are all moving along a curve, right? The road itself moves along a curve. The stripes move along a curve. Maybe bushes along the side or tires along the side if it's a racetrack. Anything like that, this is an extremely powerful, useful tool for. But let's go ahead and look at just a couple ways we can mess with these ducks for now. So first we'll go to density mode and we'll change it to fit. And what this does is it takes into account the size of the duck and it averages it out in a way that makes it so they're not overlapping. And if we go to fit mode or fit axis, it's guessing best. Ducks are directional here, so this is not guessing correctly. If we change it to, let's try Z, also incorrect. Let's try Y. Yeah, Y is correct. So now all the ducks are facing the right way. If we scroll down further, we can do things like min and max scale if we want some of them smaller. We can sink them into the ground if it makes sense. We can adjust their tangent a bit. So if we want to move them towards or away from each other or by normal to the side, add a little bit of randomness to the path. We can add a random seed. We can come down here further and go to parallel width. And this is something that I think the racetrack example will make a lot of sense. So let's get rid of the binormal jitter for a second. Come into parallel width section. We have both already on. If we add a distance, you'll see that we have now 2 rows of ducks outside of this. So you can imagine there's a road here, and here's like some poles or something. And if we add in count, we can add multiples of that. Or we can scroll down and keep center if we want the middle as well. Let's go ahead and toggle off that keep center. And let's go down to, let's see, another example. Where's We have our base properties. Let's look at rotation properties. Look at mode next. So we can swap this to previous. They'll turn the opposite direction. We can just add in specific rotations or a bit of randomness there. Mess with their positions a little bit closer, or proximity mask them, right? So if we want to duplicate this this barrel and bring it over, let's see. Bring them over, add it as a proximity mask, and you'll see that we start having ducks disappear, and they'll disappear based on the distance here. Turn up the sampling if you need a little bit more accuracy in it. A second example for path scatter might be a little bit more practical versus the ducks. Let's say we had this barrel and we wanted to place them all along this edge right here. So if we came into create, we came into curves, we could go down to draw curve and just draw the curve here. Hit stop. We want to scatter, path scatter. Let's just add it in as our curve, grab the barrel, add it into the barrel. And we automatically have all of these barrels here, which was way quicker than manually placing them. And let's just make a few settings to make it look good. So density mode, fit. You can see it's doing something to get the fit working, which is it's messed with the scale of these. So we can come in here, scroll down to fill stretch, turn it off. Let's add in some random spins maybe. Okay, not on that axis. Y. Z. Okay, random spin Z is what we want. And again, manually place, manually spin, adds up. Here, manually spin, give it some binormal jitter. Here, these two, all the jitters are looking nice. These two are a little close to what I would want on the edge here. So let's grab this, come down to proximity mask, add it in, adjust the distance a little bit, just fine tune it. Knocks out 1. Let's throw it at 100, see what happens there. Increase sampling, maybe like 80. Okay, so it's really touchy. 95, there we go. Knocked them both out. And that's procedural, right? So if we come in and move this around or we make more settings, anything within the proximity of this will be knocked out. And that's really useful along larger environments or along a road or something. If you're adding in obstacles along the side, you put a house somewhere, it just kicks out the trees that are there. Really useful. Now let's go ahead and look at something a little bit less useful, but I think very interesting and fun. So let's again, one more time, use the create menu, and we will go to mesh primitives. Let's bring in a sphere. Let's make the sphere super big. Bring it up to the sky, holding shift and left mouse. And I don't know if I already have it in the scene. Okay, I do, yeah. So we have this balloon. And let's volume scatter this balloon. So we'll go down to the next one, volume scatter. And we will add it as a scatter. We'll add the mesh as where it goes. The mesh that we're scattering will revert to its default scale, but we still get scale controls in here. So if we push H on the sphere, we will get back to a view where we can see this. You can see that they're kind of going out of the sphere because the origin point is in the middle of the balloon. But let's go ahead and dial down scale to something super tiny, like 0.1 and 0.2 or something. And maybe the density down to like 2. Something more realistic. We can add some randomness, seeds. Let's see, let's a little bit of rotation jitter to things. Just whatever. This would be super useful in very rare cases, but I imagine if you wanted to put a bunch of birds in the sky or bubbles, or in this case, like balloons, doing this by hand, huge pain. Doing it with a volume scatter, really useful. So yeah, we won't use that so often, but I just wanted to cover it since I think that it's a pretty cool tool when you need it. For the next scatter, I had noticed that I got so excited about volume scatter that we missed the Decal Scatter, which was the next in the list. And this is extremely powerful. If you aren't familiar with decals, decals are essentially 2D textures that have transparency that you can project onto an environment when you bring them close to add stains. You can see the stains down here, dirt, whatever it is. And this is a core component of modular world building, where if we look at these slabs, I think this is a good example. You would model this slab once and duplicate it around, but through decals, all these little folded sticky notes or decals, you can add things like these stripes. You can add things like this paint and scratches, or you can add, let's go ahead and add our own. So let's go in here. I brought in some from Megascans. These concrete cracks, you can drag it in. And we have interactive move, of course. Hit enter to lock it in. And you can add in really, really high quality detail without the time sink of having to model this across all the assets, which is super expensive in both time and cost for the engine. So this is something that you can see used across this environment, is used in a lot of AAA workflows quite liberally. So it's something to be aware of and to get familiar with. Now, you could place them all by hand in environments, or in this case, we could scatter them. Okay, so let's go ahead and use what we learned earlier, which is to drag in assets from the content browser. And I already have a couple decals here from Megascans. Drag them into the environment, hold Control, release, scatter here. And it'll scatter those on this and automatically plug in the surface, which was what I had the mouse on top of. And the decal here, all three of them are added in. And now I can go ahead and start messing with it. Density 1, crank that up. We can close this for now. The scale is obviously massive, so let's go ahead and pull that back. Push G to toggle off the preview of all the controls, and you can see we have all of this fine, nice detail in this slab. Now, some of them are overlapping onto here. We can go in here to the mesh, turn off decals if we want manually. But if we have other decals on here, it's not as simple as that. And that's where all the different masking options inside of Dash come into play. So we can go in and just border mask it out. We can select this mesh and just use it as a proximity mask or an object mask. We can go in and fine tune exactly where things are. We can also just come in and grab one and move it around if we want. But let's go ahead and add in a couple more meshes just to see it added in as a surface. And you'll see that now all of these cracks are spread throughout all of these. Super simple and easy. You don't have to drag around these 200 or so decals. They're just randomly placed. You can mess with their seeds, get interesting placements, mess with their scales, all the different noises and mass. It's a huge time saver when you're building out an environment. Imagine you're looking at something. I mean, this is a slab, but imagine you're building out a parking lot. You want to scatter using surface scatter all of your plants and bushes and little stones and trash. You use something like physics drop to drop a bunch of debris in a corner. You could want to add in a bunch of variety to your plain asphalt material. Use Decal Scatter and scatter that across, and very quickly you have a very realistic environment that would have taken ages to build by hand. So yeah, using these in combination is where you start to see a lot of the time saving throughout a larger environment. Let's go ahead and delete some of these ducts. Let's delete some of these decals to save on memory here. Let's see, select here. If you scroll to the top of a folder, right click on it, select immediate children, you can delete them all. Okay, cool. So let's look at the last two scatter methods inside of Dash. So we have grid scatter and we have radial scatter. Delete this path. Let's delete these barrels for now. And I think for grid scatter, barrels will make the most sense. Let's go to scatter, grid scatter, add in the scatter. For origin, this is wherever you want it to scatter a grid from. So if you have a platform or something, you can just plug that in there. I'll just plug in the same mesh for now. And we have in a perfect grid all these different barrels. And we do 4, 4, let's do high as well. And we have these barrels, but since we have the origin point is here, you'll see that they're below the surface as well. Fortunately, the guys at Dash are pretty clever, so they have the ability to remove bottom. And let's adjust their width because there's too big of a gap. I think probably something like 6 will make sense on both axes. Let's feel out this top one so we can height higher. Since they're sitting on each other, probably something like 8.75. Yep. Maybe slightly more. Let's do like 8.8. There we go. Perfect. And then we can random spin these. We can mask them out from things or mask them from things. So let's see here. Let's see rotation, random spin. Let's see what jitters. Yep. Z jitter here. And we have these barrels just perfectly placed. This would take so long by hand. Of course, you could duplicate out a row, duplicate the section, duplicate the layer up and down. But this is so much quicker. If you have it near something, we could plug this in as a proximity mask. But yeah, let's move on to the next one. Delete these barrels and go to scatter, radial scatter. Okay, the ducks are going to be more fun for radial scatter. So let's click a duck, scatter, radial scatter, add them in. And you'll notice that it's scattered, I believe, around the origin of the scene. So if we come down, maybe to position, origin mesh, there we go. And then if we bring down this radius, something like 2, now we have a meeting of the ducks. And they're all around the origin. But you'll notice that as they're placed, we have some wonkiness. We can dial it in. There's a cool setting, or before we get to that, let's just look at this first section. So we can do crazy things. So if you do height, you can create a spiral staircase of ducks. Of course, this is, you wouldn't use ducks, but I think it's a pretty cool visual example here. We can adjust the radius, the start angle, so you don't have to have a full 360 if you want. I do in this case. We can come into concentric. We can add in a second row of them, and let's bring it way down, maybe even further down, like 1 or something. Yeah, second row of ducks. Even closer. Let's bring them in tight. But you can see they're all sort of floating in the air, and this is what I was about to mention a few seconds ago. So if we come into projection, and I learned this all through trial and error, it's just coming in and seeing what works and seeing what looks good, and then sort of finding your favorites and adding them to your favorites for later. There's more complex ways within Dash that you can set favorites or combinations of tools and presets. I won't dig into that now because we're just doing a quick overview. But if we come into projection down here and we do, let's see, projection mesh is the landscape. They all snap to the surface, which is super, super cool. So even if we were to rotate them, expand them out, they would continue snapping to whatever you had added in as a projection mesh. So let's add in another example here, bringing in this barrel here. If we add it as a projection mesh, the ducks go on top of it, which is super cool. I imagine you can create some pretty cool little animations of the ducks crawling across it. But yeah, so that is those settings. You'll see that the ducks here look more spread out. We kind of like them just fit, right? So if we come into that concentric folder of tools, come down here, adaptive count, it automatically calculates out, so you have the exact same look. And just to close it out, let's go ahead and add in a little green duck here. So if we add in a green duck, come into scatter, now we have some of them as green. And yeah, that is going to do it for all of the different scattering methods. All of this is super powerful. You can see I breezed through all the different settings, but give it some time. Get quicker with place, getting things into your scene much faster, moving things around more efficiently, come into scatter and just play with things and see what you can make and create, right? Like if we control H to bring back this volume, grab a barrel, let's see, let's close this scatter, come into volume scatter, scatter, mesh. You know, you can create all kinds of crazy things with this. Some sort of abstract art, don't know what it is. Very near automata, so I think it's a fitting way to close out the videos. So yeah, that will do it for this intro to most of the basic ways I'm using Dash to speed up my environment creation and to help make everything feel just a little bit more realistic in my scenes. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button so you can find your way back, and make sure to check out this video next where I introduce more new ways that I'm bringing my future worlds to life better than I ever could before.